World War I propaganda. Let's not use the word propaganda. It has negative connotations nowadays. Back then, it wasn't quite so negative. Let's call it World War I advertising and public relations. That sounds a bit better. This was the first time there was a national coordinated campaign using all the media available. That would be magazines, newspapers, brochures, handouts, influencers, that's interesting, and something new, film. The war started in 1914 in Europe. We didn't join until 1917, I think. So there was a lot of propaganda going on in Britain, a lot of motivational advertising and marketing, and it was very successful. And when we joined the war, the powers that be here studied what had gone on for the last few years in Britain. Take a look at that. Does that look familiar? We also stole a lot from them, which was okay because they got a head start. President Woodrow Wilson tapped George Creel to be the head of the Committee on Public Information. Creel was a journalist. He was a Wilson supporter, oddly enough, and was involved in a few of his campaigns. And he wasn't really in advertising, but he knew a lot about advertising. He knew a lot of people in advertising, and he was the perfect choice for this. The Creel Committee spawned endless divisions to shape public opinion. One to make movies, another to make posters, another to organize novelists and professors to explain the war, another to coordinate some 75,000 four-minute men in delivering brisk, exhorting speeches, and so on endlessly. Okay, as we continue, I want you to remember that there was a very dark underbelly to all this. I am not condoning it or glorifying it or demonizing it. I am only interested in the techniques that were used, all the coordination, because this was incredibly successful. Recruitment posters. I want you for the U.S. Army. Well, you've seen this one before. We grabbed that one from England. Take a look at all these posters and in the back of your mind think this. They all have the same message, but they are all coming from different directions. I want you for the U.S. Army. Oh, patriotism, maybe a little intimidation, enlist on which side are you on, guilt, destroy this mad brute. They're coming. And the last one's my favorite. Gee, I wish I were a man. I'd join the Navy. Well, there's a fascinating story behind this poster. I think I'll put it up at the end of this class. You can read it or not. Howard Chandler Christie, one of the great illustrators of the time, and all these were done by top-notch illustrators. And this was the first time there was a national ad campaign where women were portrayed as strong, dynamic, capable of anything. I'll stop there because these posters pretty much say and show it all. A couple of years later, there was women's suffrage. I think this campaign had something to do with it. And 20 years later, there was another war, unfortunately. But take a look at that poster. Do you think the people who came up with the ad campaigns in World War II took a look at some of these campaigns from World War I? Even more collateral marketing. 4-Minute Men rouse citizens. Creel and his committee asked the important people in different towns and cities to get up and talk for 4 minutes about the war effort. It was very successful. And you have to understand that when you went to the movie theaters back then, it was a social event. I would say that a lot of these people were the original influencers. And of course, you couldn't go to the state fair without lots of marketing collateral for the war. And there were songs, popular songs. I could sing this for you. I remember a few verses. but I will spare you. Charlie buys a Liberty Bond. Well, this looks kind of silly today, but at the time it was cutting edge technology, cutting edge entertainment. Charlie gives money to the government gives Charlie a Liberty Bond, the government gives the money to industry, and industry designs and produces an armament for the soldier. People had never seen anything quite like this before. It was a real visual imprint and made you a part of the process. And of course, you can't buy just one Liberty Bond. You have to buy 2 Liberty Bonds. Five successful campaign slogans. Although I don't think of them as campaign slogans, I think of them as clear messages. All the people involved from top to bottom in creating these campaigns studied George Creel and his Committee on Public Information and what they did during World War I. Clear messages. Today it's going to be even more important. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and the 2020 election cycle is about to begin, and it's all going to be virtual. We've never seen anything like this before. And I'm going to use a phrase I hate more than any phrase I've heard about advertising and marketing over the last 10 years. Cutting through the clutter. Oh my gosh, I'm getting sick just saying it. But in this case, it is going to be true. Whoever has the clearest message will win. And as promised, the Howard Chandler Christie story. This could be the first time in advertising when an actual event inspired an entire campaign. Next up, the 1920s, the golden age of advertising.